I hope the best for the class. I don't want to see it fail because it is a fantastic class. I just hope it grows fast enough to succeed. Because it would suck as a driver to invest your time and invest your money into this, hoping that we get enough cars to grow, and then it doesn't, and they eliminate the class, and you got to go back to where you either came from or step up to the next class, whether it's a modified or, late model or back down the street stocks. And that's the thing I was saying about the cost of those cars. I know IMCA does a pretty good job of trying to keep everybody on the same level playing field the way they write their rules. But rules are rules. There's guys that are going to be able to do things other guys can't. The class itself, other than, like I said, the cars looking all the same, is phenomenal. We've watched, you and I have watched a lot of those videos together on, live on Facebook or, the pay-per-views. I do wish it the best. I want to see, other than Kevin Roberts, who is going to be in that class. I don't want to see, and this is what I like any other race fan. I'm not talking about from being involved with the racetrack on any level. I'm talking about a race fan's perspective, showing up at a racetrack and watching a 5-car main event or a 6-car main event. It's just not fun. You know what I mean? That's just the way race fans think. When you got a guy that, you got a main event that rolls out with street stocks that has 16 cars or 18, 20 cars, and then the next main event rolls off and it's got 6, you kind of know early in the stages what's going to happen. You see what I'm saying? That's what I'm talking about, this class. I want it to either just explode and do well, or the experiment, when I say experiment, I'm talking about the division itself, goes one way or the other.
And I think you're going to see a lot of drivers that have been in late models that literally are tired of that cost.
Which is getting completely outrageous.
And they've been looking for another class, but they don't want to jump in the mods with everybody else because, there's so many of them. And
that's a valid point, too. And that's something we kind of talked about off the air.
So you
might see guys stepping down.
You might see them where they can have some adjustability in these street stocks that they weren't able to what setup they've been running and used to changing and modifying and whatnot the whole time in the late models. This gives them that opportunity to where they can step down their budget. It's within parameters for their budget, and they can go racing, and they could still wrench on the car and have the adjustability that they couldn't in street stocks. Right. So you might see it. You might very well see some of these guys jumping into cars like that doing it. You never know.
And that's a great possibility, and I'm glad you brought that up because that is something else we've talked about. We talk about a lot of guys moving up. They see a lot of opportunity with more of a race car type, manufactured race car than what they're doing in the street stocks. It gives them a chance to step up and run that type of race car where you might, like you said, see guys step down from a modified or see guys step down from a late model because of the cost. I hope that doesn't happen either because we're already seeing some struggling car counts, not just in our area, but look at the state of California.
Mm-hmm.
Late models right now,
they're diving down.
They're in bad shape. And I think that as a track owner, what do you do to control the cost? What do you do to get those car counts up, other than and this is going to be the argument you get from every track owner, other than raising the purse. Mm-hmm. Money draws racers. We know that. Mm-hmm. That's the simple answer. We know that's not going to happen because that's not how track owners / promoters think. They would rather do something else than up that purse to get the cars there. Okay? The simplest way, the simplest way is to go find a corporate sponsor or a sponsor for that class and say, hey, look, we're going to have a $10,000 purse. Okay? Points fund. Now, that doesn't mean, that means you're probably still going to race for $1,000 a week in that elite division of late models, and you're still going to run for, $500, $400 for an IMCA modified. Mm-hmm. But if you've got that points fund, if we can get these sponsors or track owners, whoever it is, to step up and put that purse there on that class, that's going to draw more cars. Okay? If you can get a good points fund for this IMCA stock car class, I can see it taking off. Now guys will go, you know what, this is a pretty cool division. I like the rules, I like the cars. They're on the G60. I can step out of the modified and move down. Still on the same type of tire and still have just as much fun. You might see that class grow. But getting cars to the track, like California right now is just shot when it comes to late models. I mean, you show up at a weekly show and you're lucky if you see 10 of them. And why is that?
Well, I'd say a lot of it is guys jumping on board with the mods. You see a lot of late model drivers that are running mods now. It fits their budget better. They can race on half the fuel, half the tire cost for the year. That's why they did it. That's why there's such a flood of mods.
Well, and you look at what Joel said in the conversation we had with him on the air, and he's got a valid point. You show up at a racetrack back east, and it's $2,000 for a weekly show. Mm-hmm. Okay, the Western region, we're not there yet. We're not there yet, and again, that goes back. There's just a multitude of things, whether it's corporate sponsorship, track promoters, sponsors. There's just, we're not on that level where guys are paying $2,000 a week to win a late model show. I think if we were to see that, you'd see the car count double on the late models. I think you'd see it double in any class where you put up that money. Now there's an old saying that applies to business everywhere. Takes money to make money. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you spend that extra money every week, you're going to get more cars. What do more cars do? More cars bring more fans. What do more fans do? More fans buy more hot dogs and beer, and it's all relative. You've got to have the cars there, and that's the thing promoters are trying to figure out. How do I get them here? What do I do? You know, with the cost of racing the way it is, you can't get the cars to the track without the payout, and which is what Joel was saying, and it's a legitimate point. You know, look at the factory sponsorships that the Katy Twins got this week. The West Coast matters. You just have to ask, and that's true. If you don't ask, the answer is always going to be no.
Well, you have to find the right person to ask, though. You see what I'm saying?
But if you don't ask, it doesn't matter right person or not. The answer is always no.
Yeah.
You've got to go. You know, so many people look for sponsorship on the local level. Great. If you can get those hometown sponsorships, they're going to help you out with maybe a couple tires or, you know, some oil or whatever. That's fantastic. But you go after the big ones. You got to go after the big ones to get the money. Okay, now that applies not just to race teams and race drivers. That applies to track owners and promoters.
Well, what race was it last season that the fans actually paid into the purse?
Goes to the Iron Giant. You know, we saw $5,400 2 years ago. Last year it got up over $3,000 from the fans putting the money in. Okay, that doesn't happen every week. You can't count on that. So as a owner or a promoter, you've got to do something. You've got to do something to get that money. Okay, whether that means calling up
Craftsman Tools,
Schaefer Oil, or whatever brand you're using, whatever is racing related. You've got to have that racing related stuff to get them there. Whether it's Coors Light or Budweiser. Hey, look what Budweiser does at Bakersfield. They throw a ton of money into that track. Okay, which allows Scott Schweitzer to get, you know, the payouts up and championship points at the end of the season. You've got to have that type of corporate sponsorship to support these tracks. I'm not talking about the series. I'm talking about the tracks. Local tracks like Willamette Speedway, Sunset, Cottage Grove, Bakersfield, Elma, whatever it is. They need that support just as much as those big tracks like Eldora and Knoxville. It's no different. But you've got to find a way to sell that to those big companies. And I know that's not easy to do. Mm-mm. It's not, especially in today's world. Because they want to know, what are you going to do for me? Mm-hmm. You know, putting signs up at the racetrack is great, but is that going to sell my beer? Is that going to sell my oil? Getting the money in today's world is so much harder than it used to be, because it's not good old boys. Like we mentioned earlier, it's not a hillbilly deal anymore. This isn't good old boy Saturday night race. Now, there are some classes that are, yes, but the guys that are really racing, I mean, when you race on the level of the Duties and Rob Maya and Darren Koffel and, the Kronks and Joey Tanner and these guys that are building these late model style race cars that are so expensive, if you want to keep those guys coming back to the track, you've either got to have the money in a points fund, higher payout, or the sponsorship has to be on the cars. See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I am. And Larry Baker has a good point here. He says this goes back to the conversation where you mentioned the people in the mall having no idea there's a track in Lebanon. We got that question so much, and we got it last year and the year before. What do you do in the community to get those people in the grandstands? You've got to get out there and promote those tracks. And that goes to the sponsors and the drivers,
Promoters like us.
If the money isn't there, then this whole thing goes away. And we're going to talk. We're going to have a really, really good conversation next week on Northwest Dirt News, a special call-in guest. Okay? This lady is somebody that, as race drivers, as team owners, you're going to want to tune in next week. Okay? Her name is Patty Prestidge Frost. She has been in the motorsports industry for a very, very long time. She's got some big-time connections. She's a former director of marketing at Hoosier Tire, former director of marketing at Bell Helmets. I mean, she's been with some very, very elite companies in the motorsports industry. This lady knows marketing. We're going to have a conversation with her next week. We're going to talk about that. How do you get that money to the racetrack? How do you get that money on the side of your cars and the trailers? How do you get that money for the points funds? We can't have a better guest on the show to talk about marketing and motorsports than what we're going to have next week. She's lived all over the country. Right now she's in Kansas. Lives in Kansas, and she is super, super tight with Ken Schrader. She's one of Ken's best friends for, we're talking decades. Okay? She understands how to get that money. She understands what companies are looking for when you approach them to get their money. We're going to have that conversation. What do you have to do to set yourself apart to get that product or that money from Bell Helmets or Hoosier Tire or Redline Racing Oil? Or, that's the thing that we're going to do next week. We're going to talk about that extensively. We're going to have her on the air, and I know we're all going to learn something from this lady. She's an awesome lady. I've had her on Facebook for years. I've learned a lot from her, talking with her, and I want to share that with everybody out there listening that is a part of a race team or owns a racetrack. She's going to give us an education. And everybody has their own way to market their team. Like everybody has their own idea of what oil is best. Like we had that conversation with Cam Evans last week.
Exactly.
She's going to tell us through decades, and I mean decades, of experience in this industry what does and what doesn't work. If you own a race team or you drive a race car or you own a racetrack, next Thursday night you want to tune in, you want to listen, because you're going to get some great ideas. You're going to get some professional advice on how to get that money to your race team. It's going to be an awesome deal. I want to go into our next commercial break here at 7:30. We're gonna step out of here at Northwest Dirt News from the Amco Transmission Studio at Jetstream Auto Massage tonight. We're gonna take a quick break. We'll be back in about 4 minutes. Stick around right here on Northwest Dirt News on Spreaker Radio. How are you guys doing?
The Wild West welcomes the most technologically advanced dirt track racing chassis being introduced by none other than the West Premier Dirt Track Speed Shop, Bar S Motorsports.
The Longhorn chassis has been produced since 2010 and was created by two former NASCAR champions, the Labonte brothers.
Bar S knows what performance means. FK bearings, rod ends, Weir's machine, hypercoil springs, Penske shocks, and real racing wheels are all part of the Power Pack products guaranteed to be on the shelf.
Dirt track champions need the best equipment with brands like Lost Fire Suits, Safe Craft, Hooker Harnesses, the joy of seating, and cold fire extinguishers. Why trust your